Welcome back to A Moment in History. I'm Seth Udinsky. In January of 1959, a group of 10 young Russian college students set out on a hike through the Ural Mountains in Siberia on a journey of several hundred miles in total. One student, who was suffering various health problems at the time, was actually forced to turn back not that long into the hike. It proved to be the very thing that saved his life because, in the wilds of the Ural Mountains, a mysteriously unexplained tragedy occurred in which all 9 remaining hikers were killed, and according to their death wounds, killed in potentially brutal and possibly purposeful fashion. The cause of death remains a mystery to this day, as historians have wondered now for more than 60 years what happened at Dyatlov Pass. Well, in the winter of 1959, these 10 students, led by 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov, for whom the pass has since been named to memorialize himself and the other victims, were all experienced mountaineers. They took a journey that was supposed to span several hundred miles across the threshold between Europe and Asia, known, as we said earlier, as the Ural Mountains, a rather treacherous region to be sure, but one that has been traversed thousands of times throughout history and was not impossible by any means. This time, the only incident in the trip's beginning stages was the early departure of one of the 10 students, a young man named Yuri Yudin, who experienced severe health problems that likely would have put him in severe danger had he continued. As it turned out, in all likelihood, he would have ended up in fatal danger had he continued, based on what was discovered several months later after the remaining 9 team members failed to return home on time. The 9 hikers, 7 men and 2 women, including a Russian veteran of the Second World War, were killed by what is to this day an unknown catastrophe. Now, their remains were found in various clusters, none of them alone, some near their tent, which had the appearance of being ripped to shreds from the inside, meanwhile others in a nearby wooded area, and the others some 20 feet under snow in the bed of a nearby frozen creek. What was especially disturbing was that every member of the expedition had what appeared to be violent injuries on their persons. For example, cracked skulls, internal bleeding, severe bruising. This has led many to wonder if this tragedy, which by the way was ruled a death by avalanche according to the Soviet government, was actually the result of something far more sinister. And now, in the last 60 years and counting, 2 separate investigations have been conducted, one in the years immediately following the incident, and then actually a follow-up investigation in the second decade of the 21st century. This was spurred on by the loved ones of the victims who were not satisfied with the Soviet government's initial findings. Now, some have wondered if this was the result of military testing done by the Russians, perhaps a bomb test, which was popular at this time, of course, in an area they thought was remote, but had gone horribly wrong because people were there. But there are others who, upon connecting this incident to some archaic, pre-Christian tales of horror myths involving vengeful demon gods who were worshipped by the native pagan tribes in the region, these have speculated that an incident such as this, with the specificity and brutality of the injuries, could only have come about by some horrific supernatural event. Now, I personally don't buy the Russian government's explanation. What I can say is that what happened here remains, to this day, one of the most unsettling mysteries of the 20th century. Thanks so much for joining me once again for A Moment in History.